Um, Hello everyone, I'm Jane Secker. I'm an Associate Professor at City University of London, and where I'm also the Joint Programme Director of our Masters in Academic Practice. And I'm handing over to my colleague Lewis, who's going to start us off telling you a bit about how we've been understanding staff, digital literacies and open practices during the remote teaching period.
Yeah, thanks, Jane. So I'm Luis Pereira, and I'm also Program Director of our MA in Academic Practice with Jane, and we are both from CT, and we've been looking at the impact of
What have you done?
Yeah. So we are talking about a research project we conduct, and the focus of what we are about to share is really what happened during the pandemic and the lockdowns, and the way people dealt with the digital challenges. And we'll be looking at these three main questions today, which is what have we learned about staff and students' digital literacies through this process? What are the motivations and barriers to open educational practices? And finally, what impact did the pandemic have? On both the digital literacies and the academic practices? We are focusing on one specific module of our MA program, which is offered to our colleagues at CT. And Jane runs this module in digital literacies and open practice, and we invited former students to be part of the research project, and we've got 15 positive answers. And so we did the interviews last year in July, and we were able to interview 13 colleagues. So we are briefly sharing some of the results with you, and then Jane will talk also about the module, because I think it's important to know a bit more about the context and how the module has helped our colleagues. And the last part will be about the second data we collected, or the second part of the data, which is a letter to themselves. So it's about digital narratives. And I think now it's you.
You'll hand it over to me. Yeah, we thought rather than to spend all our time and use it all up describing the module, you're probably more interested in some of the findings. I did some research on the same topic in 2019, and I actually presented it at a conference about 2 weeks before the lockdown in March of 2020. It was the last in-person thing I went to. And so we're building on some of the findings we had from earlier research. But one of the things obviously that changed in that intervening period is that we had a pandemic, we had a lot of remote teaching. So we felt there was an opportunity to understand what might have changed from prior to that, because I had some data from 2019 we could compare it to. So just some of the sort of findings, and we asked staff about their own digital literacies and their students' digital literacies as well. And I think some of it won't come as a big surprise to you, that lecturers became quite clearly more aware that students needed support around digital literacies, and that their abilities were quite mixed. I think that what we do see in the interview data is still staff continually overestimating their students' abilities. There are still many of them, and I have to say that this will depend quite a bit on whether they've come on my module and had it drilled into them that digital natives do not exist. But there are still many of them that believe their own skills are much less developed. They compare themselves unfavourably to their students. We also see, when we talk to them about their own abilities, a really, really steep learning curve for their own development that happened for many of them really quite rapidly during the COVID period. And I think it pushed many of them outside of their comfort zone. It made them do things that they had just been actively avoiding doing, but actually many of them saw that they did have greater digital literacy abilities. And obviously a huge awareness for the importance of the skills and the tools, and quite a focus on talking about that kind of functional sort of capability of being able to use the technology to know how to do particular things. I've got a couple of quotes here from some of the interviews that I just thought are nice to illustrate. Firstly, something around the impact that the pandemic had on students, and some of the things where they spent a lot of time, and I think a lot of us are seeing this about students having less kind of social skills and spending a lot of time on their own. So you need to wean them away from the digital to understand about real life engagement, and having thousands of friends virtually is no good if you can't have a conversation online. But also, one of the things that came up, particularly in the pandemic, was about staff having an awareness of what students did and didn't have access to. So one particular member of staff we interviewed was really clear that with libraries closed, there was actually a lot of resources that students were really struggling to get hold of, and they were also aware of issues around, you know, digital poverty and things like that. So the other area, and this is a focus on my module, is all about open educational practices. And I think it's not dissimilar to a lot of the literature in this field, that many staff talk about how it's important to share their teaching materials, to share their research findings, but when that comes to kind of how I would describe that as open educational practices, they don't really recognise that term. They kind of understand I share things with teachers in my discipline. Do you know what OEP is? Are you aware of open education? Yes, I'm aware of the principles, but I haven't heard of that terminology. Unless they come on my module, of course. There was what you'd also see is that generally much greater understanding of it in the context of research and open access being something that staff are familiar with. That I could see it's evidence that there was a greater understanding of openness after the pandemic. So people were sharing much more and kind of quite aware of some of the barriers that were in place. And again, many of them recognising that for their students, they wanted to put as few barriers in place as possible. So actually discovering how to find open access resources, how to find research articles on open access could really help them actually signpost their students to content that they knew they would be able to get to. So again, we've got another kind of quote there about students.
It's a repetition that, yeah, we can.
Yeah, we'll move on to that one. In terms of training and support, so lots and lots of people, as I say, had probably stayed in their comfort zone. We had a massive awareness that technology was very valuable in teaching, and staff are definitely becoming much more open to using technology. But I think what we also noticed in the data is kind of that sort of snap back, and people sort of saying, "Oh, we want to get back in the class." I think there's a lot of interesting data that we need to explore further about confidence and feeling credible when they're using technology, and that's just as important as having the sort of functional skills. But we can definitely see people talking about how when I did this module, it actually changed my way of thinking. So we've got some quotes here. Again, through the module, I came to understand it doesn't necessarily mean that because someone's older, therefore they're not as good, they're not as literate as the younger generation. And again, another comment, since being on the module, I think open is a much more holistic concept. It's not just about having access. Timing, how are we doing? So this is a bit about the module. I'm going to kind of skip over because I think you're going to have these slides. But if you are interested in finding out more, then it's a 15 credit module. It's sort of in the second year of our MA in academic practice. Module aims. Loads of different types of staff come on this module. And also it is accredited for City Library and Information Science students as well, but we have quite a range of staff particularly health sciences lecturers as well, very interested in it. That's the structure of the course. It is taught online apart from the final day where we bring everybody in, and we also have a webinar series where we have lots of guests coming in. On the final day, we play the board game that I created, which is called the Publishing Trap, and it's a game to develop copyright literacy, understanding about open education, open educational practices. It's a kind of role play game, and we use these characters throughout the module as well. The game, if you want to, is all available on from the links. You can Google the Publishing Trap and you can download everything because it is an open educational resource. And then in the assessment, so one of the assessments is quite traditional, but they make a video, but it isn't shared. The other assessment is a reflective essay that they have to publish on an open platform. So I do have all those essays I'm about to put up the essays from this year's cohort as well. And we're getting a really nice range of topics that people have talked about. Lewis, you want to talk about reflective narratives before we run out of time completely?
Exactly. So, and then, going back to the research project with thought, maybe we could ask them to do some reflection about the digital skills they gain throughout the process, because we promote this reflective approach and we realize that we tend to focus on the skills we don't have, and not necessarily to celebrate. Obviously, it was because of a negative situation, but we were able to gain more digital skills and to teach online some things most of us were not able to do that 4 years ago or so. So the prompt was, imagine yourself in the early days of the COVID pandemic, when lockdowns and restrictions were put in place, changing our lives. Now, think about the impact of this period had on your digital skills and write a letter to yourself by then. And
can I just say this? When he suggested this, I didn't think any of them would do this. And the fact that 8 out of 13 wrote us quite lengthy letters that are all, actually, some of them made me want to cry. They're really quite emotional, what they wrote.
Yeah, and we are about to show you just a few quotes, but actually more interesting than the letters themselves was what they wrote in the emails, saying, "Oh, this
how cathartic it
exactly.
was.
It helped me to think about what I went through."
Yeah.
So really a nice activity with some impact as well. And so it's a wonderful time to learn new skills and find new ways to establish human connection. And we don't have time to read all of it. So readiness and ability to embrace new technologies has grown as a result of remote working. Openness is again another topic covered. And last one, do not fear. You'll learn how to use all the different websites and technologies you need. It won't be quick or overnight, but you'll take each new hurdle one at a time, just as your colleagues and students will. And a final one is actually about the impact of the module on their performance during the lockdowns, which is really nice to see that the module Jane is leading and teaching has played a key role in making people more confident in going and teaching online.
Yeah, we were really surprised to find this in one of the letters, but actually it was really heartening to see that somebody was telling themselves, this is going to be the best thing, you're going to have your eyes opened, and it was really nice to read. So I think we're going to stop there, aren't we? We've got some more stuff that we want to do. We were looking, particularly, we did our interviews in a way that we're looking for variation in experience, so we're using phenomenography. So we do want to try to develop some kind of an outcome space and do our analysis in a bit more detail, publish in a journal. And if you want to see some of the student essays, then they're on the course blog. So that's some of the essays that students wrote last year, and within the next month, I will put up the ones from this year in the same place. So
two really quick things from me. The first one is that the module is open to everyone. So if someone is interested in joining the module.
Yes, although ironically it's not free, okay. It's cheaper for University of London staff, but there is a lot on the blog you can see, and I'm very happy to share resources, but yes.
And the second thing, I do apologize, but I'm providing technical support to another room, so I need to leave and apologize, especially the presenters, but Jane will stay in the room. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Thank you.